LTX 2.3 from Lightricks is an open-weight video model with native audio support. It is a serious local model, but it is also a heavy one, and that is where most videos stop being useful. They show the model on bigger hardware or in the cloud and skip the part people actually care about, what really works on a normal local machine. So in this video, I'm not guessing. I'm showing real numbers from one RTX 3090 box. Cold start, warm start, VRAM, RAM, and which setup is actually usable. Here is the reality check. On a 3090, you can stay much closer to VRAM only with a lighter single-stage path, but that comes with a quality trade-off. If you want the better looking result, the two-stage quality path also runs locally, and on a 24 gig card, the warm speed is actually pretty decent. One important note on timing. The first run loads everything from scratch and takes much longer. The number that actually matters for real workflow use is the warm run. That is after the first load when the model is already in memory. Our measured warm two-stage I2V run at 1024 by 576 for a 4 seconds clip finished in 83 seconds. Peak VRAM was 23 gigabytes. Total system RAM reached 46.6 gigabytes. So the real takeaway is not that 24 gigabytes is unusable. The real takeaway is that 23 gigabytes works well locally, but as a hybrid VRAM plus RAM workflow, not as a clean VRAM only setup. And that matters, because if you only chase VRAM only, you can spend a lot of time optimizing the wrong thing. After testing, I ended up with 3 real paths. Path 1. Strict VRAM only preview. Distilled GGUF, low resolution, 1 second clips, good for smoke tests, not good enough for a YouTube intro. Path 2. Single stage dev GGUF, better detail, still fully local and much more usable for short cinematic shots. Path 3. An official LTX 2.3 multi-stage quality path implemented here as a two-stage local workflow. Lightricks officially ships the core pieces for this: the spatial upscaler, the distilled LoRa, and support for multi-stage higher resolution pipelines. In our local setup, stage 1 generates at 512 by 288, then stage 2 upsamples that to 1024 by 576. From there, we upscaled to 1080p in post for the final edit. This gave us the best image quality on the 3090. But it also leaned heavily on system RAM. You saw those numbers. There is also an installer in the description, but let's go manual first and look at the real numbers. There are 2 workflow branches here, but 3 download profiles depending on your VRAM. For the GGUF files, go to my Hugging Face repo. If you have 32 gigs or more, download Q80. If you have 24 gigs, I would start with Q4KM for the better balance between quality and VRAM, and use Q4KS if you need the lighter fallback. If you have less than 24 gigs, start with Q4KS. That is the lower VRAM option in this set. Before anything else, make sure your Comfy UI is current. For this setup, 0.16.1 or newer. Then install 2 custom node packs, Comfy UI GGUF and Comfy UI LTX Video. Now the file layout. For the single stage GGUF path, put the GGUF model into models/unet. Put Gemma 312 BFP8 into models/text encoders. Put the LTX 2.3 text projection into models/text encoders. Put the video VAE and audio VAE into models/VAE. In the single stage workflow, load the main model with unet loader GGUF. Load the text side with LTX AV text encoder loader. In that node, pick Gemma as the text encoder, pick the LTX 2.3 text projection file, and keep the device on CPU. That is the practical compromise that frees up GPU memory for generation. Then load the video VAE with VAE loader and the audio VAE with LTXV audio VAE loader. For the quality path, the GGUF model is not enough by itself. You also need the official Stage 2 assets from Lightricks. Put the dev FP8 checkpoint into models/checkpoints. Put the distilled LoRa into models/LoRas. Put the spatial upscaler into models/latent upscale models. In the two-stage workflow, base checkpoint loaded with checkpoint loader, distilled LoRa with load LoRa, spatial upscaler with load latent upscale model. Text encoder still on CPU. So the simple version is this. Single stage GGUF for fast local content shots, two stage for the best local quality. I linked both workflows in the description. If setting all of this up feels like too much, the one-click installer is in the description. It handles everything automatically. Let me show you the exact numbers for the quality path first. This is the official multi-stage quality path at 1024 by 576. On the first real run, this workflow took 705.33 seconds for about 3 seconds of video. On the warmed rerun, the same workflow finished in 96.48 seconds. That is the good news. The catch is memory. Peak VRAM was about 22.4 gigs and peak RAM was about 47.1 gigs. So this is the best looking local path we validated on the 3090. But it is not a clean VRAM only workflow. It works as a hybrid VRAM plus RAM setup. And if I stretch that same quality path to about 5 seconds, the warm run goes to 147.65 seconds. Now compare that to the ViperDev GGUF single stage path. This is still fully local but much simpler. No stage 2, no official upscaler pass, just the GGUF workflow. On this ant shot at 512 by 480, 24 steps, and just over 3 seconds of video, the first run took 622 seconds. Now here is the warm rerun on the same setup, 111 seconds. Peak VRAM was a little over 22 gigs and RAM peaked around 31 gigs. So the single stage path is more practical, but the exact speed still depends heavily on the scene. Harder shots take longer. The point of the Viper single stage path is not speed or maximum quality. It is simplicity. One GGUF workflow, fewer moving parts, much lower RAM pressure. Best looking result, use two-stage, simpler, self-contained local path, use Viper single stage. Everything I used is linked below. Models, workflows, and benchmark notes. If setting all of this up feels like too much, the auto installer handles everything automatically. Link below. I'm going to keep testing this model. Better setups, better prompts, and dedicated breakdowns for 16 and 8 gig VRAM cards. If you want those results, subscribe and drop your GPU in the comments. This channel is about finding what actually works locally. See you in the next one.